Why do you think the Zuma years are counted as 9 wasted years? Because I have very interesting views on that one.
Yeah, this is what we're told, that this is 9 wasted years. There were 9 wasted years. And also, the problem, Zuma's term is characterized by a number of things. One, when he led into power, there was a very scandalous the rape case, right? Something that we will never be able to forget because it's how it was rubbed in people's faces. And also, he was not prosecuted. Of course, it was acquitted by the court, but around the case, some people are still very angry about the case. But 2, state capture. State capture where a private jet of a powerful family lands in our military base. This compromises the country's security. People getting tenders in government, not delivering work. Prices being inflated. And these things are not public, they're in public domain, right? I do understand that there's a story on the other hand, because of course there's always 2 sides of a story. The introduction of new media houses, right? Some people are saying that will drive a particular propaganda. But when you look into it, some people say that it was a replacement of one regime by the other. So it was a matter of, we are not with this camp. Therefore, we must establish our own camp and our own people. Fortunately, unfortunately, the camp came with politicians, service providers, people who are going to ensure that this camp is well kept. Unfortunately for Zuma, the country felt the impact quite deeply, because that's when issues with ESCOM exacerbated. We saw when the military-based, they see that someone is landing in their confines, then that also worries the country. Are we safe as a country? But also we saw people who defended Zuma during the rape trial coming back to say that, I knew. So these things are playing out in the public domain, and the public has opinions and also has feelings of people who, if a prominent case like this is not properly dealt with, imagine the numerous cases on the ground which are also given the same light. Maybe some people now, they die without attaining justice because we saw precedent with our leader. With the state capture, depending on how you look at it, some people say that it was highlighted because it was done by President Jacob Zuma and was not appealing to what people say the white monopoly capital. It was kind of replacing the group with another. So it's 9 wasted years because of the people's lived experiences, according to me. However, according to media and other people, it could be a thing of, no, this was a spin to just decampaign the president because he was not pleasing the people holding the Fort Hare economy.
Yeah. So, it's interesting for me, the Zuma debate, because on one hand, you have someone who's so controversial, just on paper, rape cases, arms deal scandals, but then when you actually do a deep dive, you realize that there was an attempt at something here, like you were saying, where you're trying to restructure the power centers within the country, where you are moving away from white monopoly capital. But then the attempt for me was not sophisticated enough. Like bridges were being built, universities were being built, tenders were being given and all this, but then the follow through was not sophisticated enough. The bridges that are being built will probably fall apart very soon. The universities that have been built are not properly funded. The tenders that were given, what was the process in doing that? So there is a claim from one side that the Zuma years were the most prosperous for black wealth creation, and to an extent that's true. But the way that it was being done left a lot to be desired. You just look at the very blatant abuses of power that happened during those years. I'm like, but then at the same time, we forget that South Africa is 80% black. We forget that only about 10% of the population has a tertiary education. Yes. And if you look at those numbers, that 80% black, of which a very small percentage of them have tertiary education, they'll look at a Zuma type character like, yeah, no benzo man. You know, you're representing us. Okay, cool, you are doing things there, but at the same time, when the same things that Zuma did, when they were done during apartheid, they seemed more legitimate than when they are being done by a black government. You know, people easily forget that South Africa was spending on average 500 million rand between 1970 and 1989 on military spending at a time when the rand was almost on par with the dollar and the euro. You know, so in that ecosystem, what abuses were happening when you only had to account for 10% of the population at a time when you were spending 500 million rand a year on military spending during apartheid? You had a South African government that was going against international law because we were the pariah of the world and giving oil to Israel. You know, no questions were asked about that. And yet similar transactions happening post-94, knowing that white monopoly capital controls the media, owns the key people that make decisions, and can then paint the picture of how things are viewed. Very few people have the...
well, we can't use the apartheid yardstick to actually... But the apartheid was a very corrupt government. Very corrupt, very inconsistent, very unaccountable to anyone. But also the apartheid government did well in the first few years of apartheid because white population was quite minority. So they were servicing the few, but also remember it did not have much administration to worry about. It had only the 4 Bantustans, provinces, whatever that you want to call it. And it also industrialized and gave tenders and jobs and senior positions to their own people. So they kept it home. They kept it home whilst ensuring that every other black person is on the periphery of any leadership or any success of sort, right? So apartheid targeted few people. So imagine now this new dispensation, democratic dispensation, it comes in. There's 80% of black people who are all wanting a chance in life, right? So it's going to be quite difficult to navigate the space. But also, remember, apartheid also did not end because they were willing, they wanted to, right? It's because they were running out of funds. They were destabilized. The international community was also on our side. So now they were forced into negotiations, right? As they were negotiating on a position where we are packing our bags, we are leaving, right? So even in the negotiation, they try to destroy some infrastructure to ensure that you don't inherit what we have. So we're going to, like ESCOM, for instance. Yes, we might blame the government that they have not done much at ESCOM, but ESCOM was built to cater for a few. So now there's a need to actually capacitate ESCOM and ensure that you build more. And when the apartheid in the 1990 and late 1980s leading to 1990, the release of Nelson Mandela, they were not just relaxing, waiting for ANC government to take over. They knew that we are going to be out of power for a very long time. So they tried to get as much as possible for themselves to ensure their wealth. Hence now we can't even redress land question to an end because they made sure that we want to make sure that we are fine, we are safe, and then we go into negotiation, right? So as much as we want to make the comparison between what we call the 1999 wasted years by Jacob Zuma and the apartheid government, the black government that led, it had so much on their shoulders to ensure that everyone is catered for. However, we don't have really good leaders in this country, especially those ones who are in our faces, who are leading us. They are unaccountable. They refuse to. They put themselves first more than the citizens, and they are. Over time, we've seen them being corrupt. They've taken a lot of funds. They have not been prosecuted. There's nothing that has happened. They continue unabated to actually be corrupt. Hopefully in the next election we'll find a new set of leaders.